Welcome to the show, everybody. It's the Crypto Lark, and I'm sitting down with Alex from Nugget News. Alex, what's going on?
How you going, mate? Happy Anzac Day. So Australia New Zealand special.
Woo! it's you got you're I'm spoiled for choice with Australian crypto YouTubers. There's a lot of you guys out there, but your channel has just grown so massively, in Australia, and I think that's really cool. And I think it really speaks a lot to your content. But you've been doing some really exciting stuff around Australia as well, which is part of the reason I wanted to talk to you today. But one thing I wanted to focus on first is, your sort of community outreach. You're always flying all around the country, going and, having meetups and talking to people. And what's kind of the response been from the community around Australia?
Yeah, well, first off, I just want to say congrats to you as well, mate. I think when we last spoke, we had less than 20,000 between the two of us, and now you've got 70. So well done, and you're doing fantastic stuff as well. But yeah, so we fly around Australia a lot to meet all these startup projects and to have community get-togethers. And what we've found is just a lot of the corporate get-togethers and that don't have a lot of soul to them. And when we have these meetups, it's hundreds of people that really care about crypto and they're passionate in the way they talk about these other projects. And that the community really does drive so much of what happens in this space. So the feedback's been great.
That's really cool. It's whenever I see like, oh, I'm going on tour again, I'm like, man, I got to start doing that. I got to actually start getting around a little bit more and, get away from the computer and hop out and, meet more people face to face. Cause I love doing it. It's amazing, to see the community out there and to see everyone in action in the community and see the enthusiasm that people have about cryptocurrencies. It's so encouraging, actually.
Yeah, we were very lucky as well. We went when the market was very favorable in January. So I don't know how well the meetups might have gone attendance-wise if we went recently, but yeah.
Or the people who would have come, I lost it all.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it can be pretty brutal in the markets sometimes. But what about the markets? What's your take on the current market situation? Where are we going? Are we going to go back down? Is it moving too fast?
Yeah, so I've been in this since 2012, and I tell people every year the market's gone down between 50 and 90%, and crypto is pretty volatile. But then this one's probably been most painful because a lot of people got in November and December, and everyone was in the red, obviously. So, I think the bottom's in now, unless we get some really bad fundamental news. Governments all pushing back. I just see there's just too much happening behind the scenes, which we're going to talk about today. There's just so many people getting into this space. So, yeah.
That's it. And this is, they're during the whole sort of, extreme red days. One thing I just kept saying was just, guys, just keep looking at look how much money is coming in. Look how many venture capital funds are getting in. Look how many companies are looking at cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. And like, it's not going anywhere except for up. And people are saying, yeah, but I know they're planning it, but where's the green today? Like, well, it takes a little time for these companies to get their act together, but it's coming nevertheless.
I completely agree with that. Sometimes price gets detached from current state of development of certain projects or the market in general, but the smartest minds are joining this space and they see the future. Yeah.
It's amazing to see how much money has just flooded in the past really week or 7 to 10 days. It's just an amazing amount of money has come into crypto.
100%. I think it. Yeah, I didn't do my technical analysis last week. I think Bitcoin was mid 6,000s, and now we're 9.5 today at time.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's really fast expansion. And of course, you always have to keep a bit of concern when you see projects going up 80, 90, 100% in a couple of days. Like there is that, what goes up must come down sort of thing. But nevertheless, I feel like by the end of the year, we're going to see new all-time highs yet again.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Just to give you an example, IOTA was less than $1, and now it's well over $2. But if you look at the chart, it was well over $5. So there's plenty of room to still go. Yeah.
That's it. And this is one thing with the current market is that there's still massive opportunity out there because we're still at 50% approximately of where we were back at the start of January and those really heady days of, the holiday season. And that was massive back then. But this is going to be a multi-trillion-dollar industry moving forward in the future. And that's something to keep in mind. Yeah, we see a lot of new projects developing, a lot of new projects disappear too. But the key ones, they stay. And they're going to reach crazy values.
And we hope that they're the ones that we're covering on our channels.
Yeah, that's right. Fingers crossed, right? Fingers crossed. It's interesting, too, when you think about it, Bitcoin, for example, even though the growth potential and the investment potential is absolutely massive, for some people, for some of the old crypto heads, it's like, Bitcoin's so boring. Like, yeah, I might want to hold it as a long-term strategic thing, but if I want to get real gains, I got to go down the list.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone still looks at that as the first thing when they get into this space. But sometimes you talk to these people and they say that oh no, Bitcoin's too expensive. I'm seeking better returns, and they are definitely going down that list and into the ICO space. But yeah, you've got to do your research because it's very easy to lose money as well as make those big gains.
Absolutely. And the ICO space is it's tricky. And we're going to talk a bit about ICOs today because there's some really exciting stuff coming out of the southern hemisphere here. But even the projects that are low market caps, they can offer amazing returns, but they can also offer amazing losses. This is the thing to keep in mind, is that it is a very volatile market, but a lot of potential too.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we're going to dive in and talk about some of the good projects we're looking at in Australia.
Yeah, let's do it. I think let's go ahead and hop in there now. This is part of what you've been doing when you've been going around. You've actually been meeting all these different Australian startup projects. And just as a background for anybody who doesn't know some of the projects that have come out of Australia, I mean, Power Ledger was absolutely massive, and it's still relatively cheap compared to where it was back in January as well. But it's such a solid project with an amazing team behind it. And it's really set the bar for Australian ICO projects. Then, of course, we had Horizon State, which came out and didn't get a lot of press during the ICO, but then has really just anybody who invested in the ICO is still so in the green. It's crazy.
So Power Ledger only yesterday announced that they're going into Japan. We put that interview up yesterday. Horizon State only raised $1 million in their ICO, and you think about that in terms of things these days, and they actually have a working product. They've got a fantastic team, partnerships in heaps of countries. I think the market cap's still only $20 million. So
yeah, massively undervalued of Horizon State, and they're just doing really cool stuff. I just love what they're doing, and this recent partnership that they've got with Indonesia is just super cool. I'm super excited about that. I'll be talking to Jamie in the coming weeks about that, just to get some more information on, because it's so interesting to see what they're doing in the real life application of cryptocurrency and blockchain projects, guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a problem that everyone knows about: corruption and decision making in the corporate and government world. It happens in the background, and if we can get that on the blockchain, change the decision making process, it's just huge. So love that project. Yeah.
Now, what about upcoming Australian projects? Because I don't know about too many of them. I know that Definity is an upcoming Australian project, and that's really exciting sounding. But what are some of the other ones that you've come across?
So I'll just give you a quick rundown. There's a few that we're working with that we can't mention their name, but I'll talk about the kind of ideas of some of these as well. So there's a lot that are getting into the energy space. We know, that Power Ledger are doing that, but that is an industry that hasn't changed in 20 years. It's very centralized. It's perfect for disruption. There's a number of energy companies that are working on different aspects of that, with some of them with a big focus on green energy and how we can make Australia very renewable. So that's a few that I'm excited about. Haven are working on the stable coin. All the different stable coins, Maker and Tether, they all go about it in a different way. So very excited to see more stable coins where we can hold our profits in a hardware wallet and safely rather than on exchanges.
I like Haven too, because it's based on blockchain, and which makes it transparent and verifiable, where you have to remember with Tether, it's based on the wills and aspirations and promises of a company that's been very secretive and non-transparent and hasn't been audited in a very long time.
Exactly, yeah. So there's another company that's working on a lot of Internet of Things sensors that will be going around sort of cities and things like that to measure smog and temperature and just all this data feedback that governments are going to be very interested in and save them lots of money. There's a very interesting one with shopping. So, throughout Asia, they live on their phones with scanning QR codes and booking restaurants and all that sort of thing. So there's a company trying to bring a lot of that to Australia with shopping and saving money and ordering in advance and all that sort of thing. A very interesting project that's using augmented reality. So, when the Pokemon craze hit and people are walking down the street running into power poles on their phones looking for Pokemon. So there's a really cool little Australian project that want to bring that to shopping malls. So you'll walk down the mall and you'll see gift vouchers, and it'll drive foot traffic into certain stores. So I think that's a really cool little idea.
And of course, it'll give a great, boom to the medical industry, in particularly, medics and shopping malls as people bump into each other and
Yeah, the side industries that will spur off that. So, exchanges, I know there's at least three multi-coin exchanges because in Australia, CoinSpot have just lowered all their fees to really try and become more competitive because I think they know that there's more exchanges on the way. And there's a little project called Moxie One that are trying to make a debit card where you can spend any coin. So even ICOs before they list, because one of the things we want is being able to spend our crypto. And we've got Living Room of Satoshi and Travel by Bit that have been doing great things in Australia where we can spend our crypto. But I think that's something that's going to make it more widespread once people can see that, hey, you can use this in your everyday life.
I like Moxie One. I like the idea that they're coming out with, and I like that they're focusing on Australia. I feel like that's achievable, especially at the start, because we know what's happened with a lot of these other debit card projects. They can't get cards issued out. I mean, 10x is just it was so much promise in 10x, and there's just no cards delivered to almost anyone anywhere except for a few people that got them right at the start, and then that was it.
And those style of projects are probably the only ones that a lot of us are seeing that haven't performed well. Metal Pay and 10x and it, because they're struggling to get those licenses.
That's it. That's it. And Moxie One, it definitely is. It's a cool project, and I just like what they're doing. And I think that Cobenhood, the underwriting of them, I think gives a whole other level of authenticity to the ICO as well. And I just love the underwriting services that are being offered. And I wish that more ICOs would hop on board with the underwriting services, because there's so much more investor confidence to see this actually happening.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's a trend that'll change this year as we get that more smart money coming into the space as well. So I've got a couple more if you want me to keep going.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's keep going.
So you know about Kenya. They've just launched their alpha for their peer-to-peer task economy. There's a little project called Loki, which are a hard fork or a clone of the code of Monero, and they're creating a fully private messaging service. So we see, in Russia where, you're not allowed to use WhatsApp and Telegram, and this will be fully encrypted private messaging, which is really exciting. There's
is that LOKI?
LOKI, yeah.
Okay, this is LOCI, which is the IP, intellectual property rights on the blockchain. So it's LOKI, guys.
Cool, there you go. I did not know of that one either. A little project that are trying to do an eBay style of things where you can actually spend your crypto and pay people that want to get paid in crypto as well. I'm trying to think of the name of that one. It escapes me. That's shocking, isn't it? They'll kill me.
That's all right. Well, we can put it in the description down below, so you guys will be able to find that down there later on. So we'll post the links to all these different projects, the ones that we can talk about anyway. I know some of them you can't quite announce the names yet because they're still working on some stuff, but for the other ones, we'll post those down below for you guys.
There's a cool little project called MassBlock, which are trying to solve that problem of we've all got 13 accounts with 13 exchanges, and it's very hard to trade or close trades when you're on your phone and out and about. So they're really trying to integrate with all those APIs in the background, so you have a one-stop app for all your exchanges. Nice. Ivy Coin, have you covered that one on your channel?
Nah, no. What's Ivy Coin? What's that?
So trying to compete with Ripple in a lot of ways in having a process of KYC and AML where you'll be the middleman between banks and all these different crypto businesses. Because we know, even yesterday, I had a phone call from some good friends of the channel who have had an established business in Australia for 20 years, and the banks shut down all their accounts. Now they've started accepting
man.
crypto.
You got to be kidding me. That's terrible.
So the idea is if people hop between Ivy Coin and the banks are, they know that there's no reason to shut them down if they've gone through all these KYC, AML, 10 points. So hopefully that stops happening, because it's very frustrating for businesses when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's really troubling because on the one hand, Australia has really been trying to open up so much to crypto. But when I was talking to the guys from Caleb Brown, they're saying, well, yeah, you get that and that's kind of the advertising, right? But then the reality is that a lot of businesses are having their bank accounts shut down, crypto-related businesses, and that's very problematic, because you want to really have that openness. And it's the one hand they're saying, yeah, we're going to be open, and the other hand they're shutting down accounts.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. If it gets to a breaking point where something serious needs to be done, or one bank comes out and says, "Hey, we're going to be crypto friendly," they're going to get a lot of customers if that happens.
Oh yeah, I'm surprised that no bank's done that yet. That would just be such an easy business move to say, guys, we are the crypto bank, and then just advertise it like crazy.
Yeah, yeah. And then probably finally the one that I've been working on closest is Blockgrain. So I'll just mention that we don't do any paid reviews on our channel, and this is the first project that I've been an advisor for, and our advisor tokens are locked for over 12 months. So we want to show that we care about these long term, because I know there's a lot of YouTubers out there that are advisors to 100 projects, and it's my opinion that you can't care about 100 projects. So
Now it's pretty easy to put your name all over the place, but it's not really easy to care about things, especially when you're trying to create content and all the rest of it. It just becomes a money grab for a lot of people. And that's something I want to point out for you guys too, is that, one thing I wanted to talk about today was Blockgrain and give it a little bit more attention to it. But really, I'm excited to, have you on the show to talk about it, because I just love what you do, Alex, and I want to support people like you who give great information for people, and and support projects which are doing interesting things, which of course brings us to Blockgrain and what they're doing. So just give us the short version. What is Blockgrain doing?
So they're trying to help the agriculture industry, and these guys have been working in farming their whole lives. And one thing they noticed was that they go to farms and people are writing stuff down on pen and paper, or maybe Excel spreadsheets at best.
I can just imagine. I just imagine the farmers. They got pull a wrinkled up piece of paper out, write a note on it, back in the pocket.
Yeah, and there's a big generation gap between the kind of 50 and 60-year-old versus the people that are doing ag science and that are graduating now that are familiar with tech, and they're trying to fill that gap. So they've got a working product that's been around for 2 years, and this app is all about knowing exactly what's on your farm in terms of storage on farm. It cuts out the bulk handler, so we love these projects that are cutting out middlemen. And it's trying to ease commodity contracting. So a lot of times if you get paid, you won't get that payment for 90 days until it gets delivered to China. And then they say, the grain was faulty. And they say, well, whose fault was that? The shipper? Did they have, bad grain in their ship? And how did this happen? So we're just getting everything, supply chain logistics. There's a number of these great projects that we know. Blockgrain is a real world use case, and it's bringing forward those payments so that they can start to pay further down the line, and those farmers get paid and they're not in debt, and opens it up to loans. All sorts of things happen once we have the exact numbers in an app, and we can do that contracting.
One thing, the other day was Earth Day, and so I did like a live stream Earth Day special talking about the different projects that can have positive effects on the environment and climate change and all these different things. Yeah. And obviously I talked a lot about the energy projects, but one thing that I don't think a lot of people think about is supply chain and logistics, because it doesn't kind of sound like super sexy, like, oh, renewable energy, that's cool, but like, oh, supply chain logistics, that sounds kind of boring. But actually it's so important, because the inefficiencies in the supply chain right now are just, it's mind-blowing. I can't comprehend how inefficient it is. It seems an absolute insanity that the industry continues with such mind-blowing inefficiencies.
Yeah, and I mean, they're thinking further down the line. We're so close to having self-driving cars and trucks, and you'll be able to just press a button where a self-driving truck will come to your farm, use Google Maps, GPS data. It's all going to be on a blockchain. They pick up your grain, which is stored on farm in those long plastic storage bags that you've seen. So you don't have to worry about trying to book a logistics company to come pick it up, and then it just cuts out those middlemen, which is fantastic.
That's it. And that of course reduces costs for the farmers. And it's interesting too that some of the massive industrial farms, they make a lot of money because of scale, right? But actually a lot of farming is still done via small farmers globally. And that's something not a lot of people realize. And that's actually really important too, is in order to give those people the tools they need to actually have a fair wage, because this is the food you eat, this is the coffee you drink, this is the cotton t-shirts that you wear. And these people deserve to be paid fairly for the things that they produce for us.
Yeah, exactly. In Australia, Coles and Woolworths dominate market share, and they determine the price of a lot of things. Milk's been in the headlines a lot lately, but once farmers have the power to decide who they want to give it to, it's going to be very interesting to see how that exports and imports percentages change if we can support local and all that sort of thing. And there's been huge interest already from the US. Because it's very generic, this app. So once it starts working well, you can use it for fruit, vegetables. We've had interest from the wool industry and from cattle so far.
The idea of traceability too is really interesting to me because one thing that I saw is it's about really the commodities, and not specifically food, but about commodities that can be grown. And of course, cotton is one of those big ones. I mean, has anyone ever actually stopped out there to think, where did my T-shirt come from?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I know a lot of consumers kind of just, I don't know, live in a bubble, and they walk into a store where they think that T-shirts just grow in the store, and then they get it and throw it away after 3 uses. But it doesn't really work like that. I personally would love to know that my cotton was grown on an organic farm in Madagascar, for example. That would be cool to know, and you could know that using something like block grain.
Yeah, you'll be able to walk into the supermarket and scan the barcode and have all that information. So it's all the way from the farm to the factory or to the supermarket. Yeah.
Which is super cool. And of course, what about knowing where your food comes from? And that's really interesting too. And it's something that, we've got markets here, and where does that food come from? Where has it been? How long has it sat in some places? And, a lot of people are thinking more and more about this because it's becoming more and more important.
I'm sure you've got in New Zealand as well, where people are starting to pay money for those premium sort of brands that they know are organic or local, and that's
Hmm.
definitely in China. That's a huge thing. We've seen it with infant formula, but just in general, they're happy to pay more to feed their families well. Now we have this huge growing middle class of Chinese people.
That's it. Now, block grain's primarily starting in Australia. I know they said there's been some interest from the US and stuff like that, but that's where the main focus has been. And there's actually been an existing product that has been being trialed with farmers, correct?
Yeah, so minimum viable product for 2 years now. Again, it was mainly about the on-farm storage at that stage with the app, and they were looking for a solution on how to make all this better and go further up the chain. And then they found out about the blockchain at the blockchain center. So it's one of those things where they had a real world problem and they were trying to find a solution, and blockchain was the solution, rather than a lot of these projects we now trying to apply it to a model that doesn't need it.
Hmm. And supply chain logistics are just one of, I don't know, it's such a great fit for blockchain technology. I think it's so natural for those two to go together. Now, I love that the MVP's been out for 2 years already, and obviously it's great for an Australian farmer who's got all these modern infrastructure and technological capabilities and stuff. But what if I'm like, I don't know, a small coffee farmer in Indonesia? How is block grain actually going to provide benefits for me?
Well, what we're seeing now is even in these countries, the stats of the number of people that own smartphones is actually a lot higher than you'd think. So a lot of people, we have that mindset, in these developing countries, there's no such thing as, smartphones, but there actually is now. And even if there's not internet coverage on the phone, this app will still work the next time you go back to the town or whatever it is. So you can start off with very basic versions to help you out. But the other thing it allows for is that commodity contract, as I said, to be pulled forward. So for the first time, these farmers might have access to capital and be able to know who they're going to sell it to, have more options than they previously would. So it just opens it up a lot to those sort of people.
And you guys are also going to be doing insurance, which is interesting. And I guess we could apply that again to the small Indonesian coffee farmer, because right now that guy has almost no chance of getting insurance, right? But you could actually do, is it peer-to-peer insurance, or is it insurance from block grain?
I'll have to look into that more. They're still working on that, but as you said, that just opens up something that has not been available, mainly because we don't have banks and insurance companies and all these things. And it's a classic example of decentralizing the industry. And block grain might say, oh, look, we know exactly how much grain's on your farm. We're happy to insure you or recommend an insurance provider because we know you've got this on your farm. Whereas as it is now, it's word of mouth. Do you have that on your farm or not? So
That's it. And I think one thing to kind of bring in a little bit here too is that farmer suicide rates are massive. And why are farmers committing suicide is because they have bad crop years, because they can't get the insurance requisite or whatever it might be, or they can't get the loan that they need in time in order to buy certain things that they need. And that's important. These are the people that are making your food, that provide the way for us to live our lives and not die from starvation. And yet, as a category of people, they have got some of the highest suicide rates, which is a fascinating statistic.
Oh, 100%. And I've got plenty of friends here in Tasmania that are working on farms that have experienced that firsthand, where they've recently tried to expand and buy more farmland, and the banks say no.
Hmm.
And they can't wait to use this app. So, yeah.
That's it. That's it. And it's going to be big because it's a necessary tool. And all those young farmers who, deserve our respect because people who make your food, again, make it possible for you to live. But there's a whole young generation coming in who want to do things differently, who want to shake things up. And I think that's really important.
Exactly. And you look at the stats about population growth and the food we'll need to feed those mouths. And the reality is, with our current farming system and the friction and all the different bottlenecks, we're not going to do it with the current model we have.
That's it. Just if we can just eliminate the efficiencies, but then we suddenly have 33% more food, which is
Yeah,
mind blowing. Mind blowing. It's
exactly.
absolutely massive. And so the loans are also important. And I think that's really, again, worth underlining is the P2P lending is that if imagine you're a big farmer in Northern Australia and you've got some extra capital sitting around, you can make some loans to some small farmers in Southern Australia or some small farmers in Indonesia. And, you can get return on your money that would have otherwise just sat there. And of course, you can help the industry as well.
Yeah, and it's probably something we've seen a lot of crypto projects now, that if you know that industry better than a bank that you're going to for a loan, if you're a website, websites better than people in that industry, and you're going to start to loan money from within all these different
Hmm.
industries, and then those people reap the rewards rather than the banks. Don't get me started about the banks. That's why we're so excited. Yeah.
But that's such a great point too, because it's like you said, when you go to the bank for a loan, essentially I give the money to the bank, they loan out my money. I don't really receive very much benefit at all for that because the interest rates on putting your money in the bank are abysmally low, but they get a great percentage on the money, on your money that they give out to other people. Now they are expected to be experts in 10,000 different industries, which they're not, which is why when you go in for a loan, they can't really make good assessments on, okay, I'm a coffee farmer. Well, I don't know anything about the coffee industry, so loan denied.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's probably it. There's one more Australian project that I want to mention, if that's okay. And
Yeah, go for it.
have you heard of the app Acorns that puts all your loose change? It rounds up to the nearest dollar and puts that spare change in stocks.
No, I
So
haven't.
it's a pretty basic idea, but it's been really popular. So there's a little Australian project called Bamboo. So if you buy a coffee for $4.70, it rounds it up 30 cents, and it puts 30 cents in a mixed crypto portfolio of your choice, or just Bitcoin if you want. And that's a really easy app that's going to start onboarding people. So, if I'm trying to convince my dad to get into crypto, he's not going to take a photo of himself and send that to an exchange and all that sort of
Hmm.
thing. With this app, all he has to do is enter his username and password and link a bank account, and he can start building a crypto portfolio.
Cool. I like it. Anything that makes crypto easier and more accessible for people, because we're still at that early stage where, for a lot of people, it's not very secure. It's not very accessible. The cryptographic addresses are a block that people need to come over. But if they can use things that are familiar to them, then that
Exactly.
can be pretty powerful. That can
Exactly.
be pretty powerful indeed. Now, we've talked a lot about Australia, and I think it's very telling because right now you guys are kicking our butts over here in New Zealand as far as, coming out with ICOs, developing projects, and some of the key Australian projects are actually working here or have offices here or connections here in New Zealand. Power Ledger, for example, is working with Vector Energy here in New Zealand. Horizon States just opened an office here in Wellington. So there is a lot of synergy between the two countries. But as far as ICOs and new projects that are being developed, Australia seems to be a real leap ahead of New Zealand at the moment. We've got some projects being developed though. A recent project called Choice is being developed on the NEM blockchain, and they're bringing essentially charity payments to the blockchain, which is kind of cool. So they'll be payment processing. So if I want to go down and buy a cup of coffee for $5, well, I can use Choice, and instead of that fee going to MasterCard or Visa, it can actually go to a charity organization here in New Zealand, which is a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, and obviously we know that with blockchain, they get 100% or close to of that money, rather than traditional charities, which has a lot of, again, inefficiencies.
Exactly, which is another important. They spend so much money on fundraising and bank transfer fees and all these different things. It's really encouraging to see the utilizations of the Ethereum blockchain in Jordan for example, at the moment working with refugee camps. That's something different as well.
That might all change though, mate. If New Zealand has 0% tax, you might find a lot of these Australian projects moving across the Tasman Sea.
I think one of the things here in New Zealand is that the government is still working on some kind of regulation. There is no capital gains tax in New Zealand currently, but they're trying to decide if cryptocurrencies should be classified differently. And so I feel like there's a situation where New Zealand sees what's going on and they kind of think we want that money, but how are we going to get it? And so there's a bit of that situation happening. So it's not that there's no tax at all on cryptocurrencies, but the gains are not necessarily taxed. So it's a gray area. I would like to see some good firm decisions from the government on what they want to do about it. Because until they decide, you're just kind of in a gray zone, which is beneficial on the one hand, but could really come back to bite you later on if they come out and say, well, hey, we want, we're going to come to the exchanges and we're going to want all the tax.
And it's the same in Australia, especially the crypto to crypto. Some people say that it was very grey and there was no guidelines, and now the ATO have started saying in talks that it's very clear that's a taxable event, and it's very frustrating. So they've sought feedback from the community, and we're now waiting on some hard and firm rules.
Yeah, because over taxation becomes a real problem for cryptocurrency adoption, because if you're going to tax people when you go to spend it, then it becomes kind of crazy because, okay, I'm going to buy a cup of coffee. Well, I've got to pay my New South Wales tax. I also have to pay some federal tax, and now I also have to pay on the profit I've made off that Bitcoin. So now I'm paying like 45% tax on this cup of coffee, or like an extra 20% or 30%, whatever the capital gains tax might be for that Bitcoin that I've made. It then becomes ridiculous. And then how do you account for all that? I mean, what a nightmare.
Yeah, and then they have the first in, first out rule, so you've got to work out which Bitcoin that was you bought. They had an exemption at one stage for personal use, but then they kind of clarified that to say, oh no, if you buy Bitcoin that day and the price hasn't changed and you buy something, I mean, it's just unrealistic. Nobody's going to do that. So it's very frustrating to get mixed messages from them.
That's it. And imagine the nightmare situation of, you're day trading and you make five trades a day on the exchange. And well, then you've also got mining on the back side. So you're mining Ethereum and you're mining Bitcoin and you have that coming in, and like,
it's going to take the ATO more resources and us more resources, and it's time that we could be spending on working on projects and making a better economy. So
Exactly. I love the synergy that's going on between Australia and New Zealand at the moment. I feel like a lot of projects are really taking that, because for anyone who doesn't know, who's outside of Australia and New Zealand, we are separate countries. That's worth pointing out immediately. But we're also like, big brother, little brother kind of thing, and it's just there's so much synergy between the two countries as far as not only attitude but also legislation and things like this, and
housing market, a lot of things.
That's it. So it's very easy for companies to jump back and forth between the two jurisdictions, and so I think we will see a few more offices being started here in Wellington and Auckland as time moves forward.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I think we should go ahead and finish up there. This has been a great chat. I think we've got some really great info about a lot of what's going on in Australia, a little bit of info about what's going on here in New Zealand. So, Alex, a great chat as always.
Thanks so much for having me, mate, and keep up all the great work you do as well.
You too, man. Cheers.
Cheers.